What's coming in White Lotus season 3? You got to tell us the spoilers. I'm just kidding.
Everybody dies. Everybody dies in the 3rd episode.
It's Shakespearean.
But don't tell anybody.
Right, I'm here with Jeremy Zimmer, CEO of UTA. He needs no introduction, so let's get right to it, Jeremy. What is your outlook for the entertainment industry this year? There are a couple X factors, and we'll talk about those. Where do you see the opportunities for clients in film, TV, and other media?
Well, I think that the business overall is healthy. We're seeing a nice, stable return in the theatrical business, which I think we're all finding encouraging. There are some macro factors going on. I mean, the strike is one piece of the puzzle, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But, you know, there is sort of a realignment and reconsideration of people's streaming strategy and where streaming fits into the overall distribution pattern of quality content. So I think what we're seeing is, you know, all of the, you know, major players, with the exception perhaps of Netflix, are sort of rethinking, you know, the all-in on streaming modality that they had been in. There's also some, you know, executive issues, executive alignment issues. And so people are, you know, some of those companies are trying to figure out, you know, who's in charge. So I think those issues combined with the strike, it may be a little bit of a slow year for production this year.
What's your best guess on how long the WGA strike goes?
I don't know how long it'll go. I imagine it won't be settled before the beginning of September. And the actors strike and what happens with the actors will be a big factor in determining that.
Do you think the studios need to pay writers differently? Are they not paying fairly?
I think that what's happened with streaming is it's been a very, you know, fundamental change in the television ecosystem. So streamers, studios, et cetera, need to rethink the compensation of writers. You know, writers for a long time worked, you know, on a television show, 22, 24 episodes, paid on a per episode basis. It was a, you know, strong business for them and a great product for studios. But now, you know, the episode orders are much shorter, yet they're still being paid on a per episode basis just for, you know, a lot fewer episodes. And yet the time it is taking to create those episodes is much longer. So writers are ending up on a, you know, overall basis making much less money on an annually. So that's really somewhat at the heart of the issue. There's also residual issues and certainly back ends, because for writers who did create shows, they would have a back end, and those back ends have now been taken off the table with streaming.
What is your advice to talent in this environment? Do they look for other opportunities outside of film or TV? What do they do?
My advice is not like, you know, no, my advice is use this time to write that great script you've always wanted to write. Use this time to think about, you know, the things that you want to do that could be, you know, really move your career forward. Use this time to read great books that might be worthwhile of turning into movies and television. Use this time when you're not on the endless sort of work wheel to think about what the career you might want to have if you weren't working all the time, and see if you can take some steps towards that.
Okay. Cannes Lions is a celebration of creativity, brand creativity. How does UTA look to creatively stand out as a brand? What does that mean for you and the agents that work for UTA?
Well, I think what UTA tries to do is be a global full-service agency, and at the same time create and maintain, you know, very meaningful relationships with their clients, and to really be, you know, great partners to clients. And we've built a platform that's broad enough so whatever a client imagines that they might want to do, we have the capability to help them do. So that's been an important part of the growth of the agency is, you know, we want to be in a place where a client can feel that we can be their partners in achieving anything that they're really suited to do and desirous to do.
Now, UTA represents not just individual talent, but you also represent a lot of consumer brands, consumer-facing brands.
Yeah, both through, UTA, which has its culture and marketing division, which we've had for about 10 or 11 years now. We represent some, Fortune 50 brands, including Delta, Coca-Cola, do a lot of work with Google, et cetera, but also through our recent acquisition of MediaLink, where we represent, a huge percentage of the, Fortune 100 brands. So between that, we are in a, constant dialogue with brands, trying to understand what is that the brands want, as well as a constant dialogue with the platforms, trying to understand how they're going to look to have brands interact on their platform and support their content and spend money with those platforms.
I mean, I guess the commonality here is connecting talent and intellectual property with the right audience in the right format, right? Or is it?
Well, it's connecting clients, platform, and finance. And brands have all long been an important part of the financial structure of the content ecosystem. So for years, all television was ad supported, and that meant brands. So, recently streaming's come along, and much of that business has not been ad supported. But ultimately, the brands have always been a really important part of the content ecosystem, an important part of creativity. And I think our job is to help manifest those relationships in an optimal way in the current environment.
You also invested in Clutch Sports. Talk a little bit about that and what you're thinking on future acquisitions or growth strategies.
Well, we invested in Clutch about 3.5 years ago, and it was, first of all, Rich Paul is a great entrepreneur, and he had an incredibly powerful but somewhat small client list in basketball. And over the last several years, Rich has, really built out a full team. He's built out an incredible roster of basketball players. He's always had LeBron, but he's added to that, Anthony Davis and Aaron Gordon and Darius Garland and Trae Young, and really some of the most, sought after and dynamic basketball players. But we've also gone into football, American football. And, we now represent a roster of, I think, maybe 85 NFL players. And that's become a very big and important part of our business. As we go forward, our overall ambitions have to do with sort of growing our international business, and European football or soccer is going to be a huge part of that initiative. So we'll be looking to build or acquire a real soccer business.
Now, you mentioned, kind of this retrenchment or reckoning on the streaming side of the industry here, and some executive misalignment. Who do you see will be the winners and losers, or who will be, without naming names per se, but...
Well, I think press is always like, who's winning and who's losing? It's like, who's getting an A and who's getting an F? I don't think life's that simple. I think there are several major platforms who are going to be global platforms, delivering content around the world. And I think those we can imagine are Netflix and Disney and Amazon, and we'll see if Apple really wants to commit and to what degree they want to commit. And we'll see how the rest of the players align around those sort of large, incredibly well-funded organizations. I mean, YouTube is becoming a bigger and bigger player, and YouTube Plus is is something we all need to pay attention to as well. But I don't know that there's any losers, because the appetite for content on a global basis is so tremendous and continues to grow. And as long as that audience keeps growing, the people who are in the business are going to have a lot of opportunities.
Let me ask you, since we're at Cannes Lion, the celebration of creativity, what is most inspiring for you creatively? What gets your creative juices flowing?
I mean, what gets my creative juices flowing today is the same thing that got my creative juices flowing when I got into the business many, many years ago. And that's the, incredible opportunity for a new voice to capture the hearts and minds and imagination of a giant audience. So, we represent Bad Bunny. I mean, 3 years ago, I would say Bad Bunny and no one would know who he is. And today, he's one of the biggest stars in the world. We represent Timothée Chalamet. He's an actor who 5 years ago, no one knew who he was. Today, he's one of the biggest stars in the world. And those stories are what are profound and exciting. We've represented Mike White for a long time, and he was a very talented guy. And then he created White Lotus, and he changed the way He certainly changed the way we think about Italy. He certainly changed the way we think about Sicily. But he also, created this unbelievable show that is everyone's so excited. We represent Jesse Armstrong, very talented writer. Then he creates Succession, and he becomes a global phenomenon. So the power of new original voices to excite and delight the world is what I love about our business.